What's up, guys? We're live. Pardon us, we're probably going to fumble and mumble through this thing today, but wanted to give you guys an opportunity to ask some questions, talk a little tech on the build, find out exactly what it took to get there. So you guys feel free to fire away, and be happy to answer most any question you have. Dan, you got a shout out already. Shout out. First shout out of the day.
You had some questions from the regular Facebook post. If you want to run through those, I know weight reduction is a big one.
Weight reduction is a big one. It's got a ton of weight reduction. The interior of the car, carpet, most of the trim panels are out. Still retains the factory dash. Still retains factory steering wheel. Headliner's still in it. Door panels are in it. Carpet's out. All the seats are out. Rear deck trim panel is out. I've got the speakers out of the car. The HVAC unit is out from behind the dash. Everything I could get out of the car to save some weight, I did. The car weighs race weight on race day with the light battery. I made the first pass I made was a 928, and it had the factory battery in the car. Weighed about 3,125 pounds with me in it. Later in the day, when I went 925, basically the only change was I took a little bit more weight out of the car. I put the little lightweight battery in the car. Race weight's about 3,090 pounds in that trim, depending on exactly how much fuel I have in the car. I try to run with about 2.5 to 3 gallons of fuel just to prevent fuel slosh, but to know that I'm not carrying an excessive amount of weight. So about 3,090 pounds race weight is where I was at on the 925 pass. What we got going on here?
Josh Anderson wants to know what types of fuel do you use, and if you use any type of meth injection.
All right, Josh, that's a good question. I get this question a lot too. I've ran multiple fuels throughout the year. I spent most of the year running an E85, pump E85, and then I got some X98 and I mixed it down with 110 leaded race gas, and I tried that for a little bit. I pretty much refined the combo on different E85 variants throughout the year, but when it came down time to come out and run a number, I went back to my tried and true CHP plus VP racing fuel. It's relatively low octane for what you would expect. It's only around 107 octane or so, but it's highly oxygenated, and I just flat out haven't put anything else in the car that made more power than VP's CHP plus in my application. So another application may vary. Compression ratio and and all that can certainly sway what you need to run fuel wise, but I'm rocking VP CHP plus.
Coy Scott wants to know if you're running a cage.
Coy, no, not currently. Before the car comes back out, I am going to put a cage in the car. Fact of the matter is, I've taken all this weight reduction and all this stuff, and obviously by taking the passenger and rear seats out and putting a Kirky driver seat in, it's essentially disabled the safety restraint system. So the car is certainly far from being safe for what I'm doing at the speeds I'm running. Certainly, the car is going to come back out 850 cert, probably a 10-point cage is what I'm looking at doing in the off season. And that's what I'm going to try to focus on is safety and optimize a few things over the off season.
Charlie Ali asks, "What's the lift on the cam, if you don't mind?"
Well, it's a solid roller, so I run a little bit more lift than your typical hydraulic stuff. That being said, Charlie. I ran into some issues and some obstacles because I'm running a 821 casting head with factory valves. I'm literally running the factory 821 LS3 valves. So I'm really crunched for installed height. I can't run what I want to run lift wise, but I'm able to squeak up there in the 700s on lift. But you know, if I could get more, I certainly would. But that's where I'm at right now. I was also kind of mildly concerned about the factory castings and having a ton of seat and open pressure as well. But fortunately, this year I didn't have any kind of problems with the heads or the valve train. So I'm in the 700s though, and wanting it to be more.
Renee Roke asked Turbo 400 versus the 4L80E.
In my application, I ran Turbo 400 just because it's lighter and it's a bit more efficient, I feel, than a 4L80E. A 4L80 would certainly be a much better street transmission, but the fact of the matter is, you know, my street driving is limited. I do drive the car some, but it's not a whole lot. I couldn't justify doing a 4L80 for my goals and what I was targeting. I wanted to run a Turbo 400 to get the max performance out of the car, and I even toyed around and thought about a Pro Trans or, you know, Turbo 350, something that was even more efficient than a regular Turbo 400. But with the budget I had to work with at the time, I snagged up one of FTI's level 4 Turbo 400s. I haven't even hooked the trans brake up on this thing yet. I've feared for the life of my factory differential all year long, so I was reluctant to hook the trans brake up. We foot braked it all year, but I really have liked the Turbo 400 because it actually makes me feel more like I'm having to do something more than just steer the car. You know, I'm actually part of making this thing go on the track again.
John Ryan wants to know if you can go over your suspension and what do you think about the subframe bushings? Are they worth it?
Well, Aquaman, suspension-wise, the car is fairly basic. I've got factory struts in the front with no front sway bar. The rear, I've still got the factory sway bar. I've got some BMR control arms with poly bushings that were originally for the lowered vehicles to run 16 and 17-inch wheels, I think. I modified those to fit the 15s. I modified the factory trailing arms to fit the 15-inch wheels, and I put poly bushings in those. From there, I've got LSR billet aluminum tow rods. They have poly bushings, obviously. I've got Delrin upper control arm bushings. And I've got the Hendrix, Thomas Hendrix offset differential bushings to physically raise the differential in the chassis for a more favorable axle driveline angle. But subframe bushings, I can't really speak on because I haven't done the cradle bushings. I've got to assume that anywhere you can tighten that up, it would help. I just haven't done that personally yet. Otherwise, most of the suspension on the rear, it's all factory or very close to factory components, but I do have the bushings, and I run a specific alignment that I found works for me to make the car work. Factory rear shocks, factory springs all around the car. That's why it looks like a four-wheel drive. The car sits up real tall. I don't really like it, but it's hard for me to argue with it if it's going 120-something, 60 foot. So,
Steve Rummel wants to know what gears are you running?
391 GM. I put those things in the car back in 2013. It's the same set I've had in there since then. At Camaro Fest, I had some posi problems. One tire was spinning more than the other. I did eventually, at Camaro Fest, actually, there at Trackside, we put an Eaton True Track in the car. So I'm running an Eaton True Track with GM 391 gears.
Richie Smith asked if you plan on force inducting in the future.
It's tempting. It's definitely tempting, knowing that I've got the car is it's light and it's fairly well dialed in. The chassis is fairly well sorted out. It's very tempting to go forced induction, but I think for the foreseeable future, I'm going to stay naturally aspirated. I think I've got quite frankly, I think I've got 4 more tenths in this car the way it sits. I think I can go 880s in 2019. So for the foreseeable future, I'm going to stay naturally aspirated, and if I just run out of capability, then I may toy with the factory forced induction. Turbo would be my forced induction type if I ran any kind of boost or anything.
Marty Harrison asked if you can give a rundown of what all is still factory on your car.
Tons of stuff. Okay, so we know the car is factory LS3 block, rods, crank, pistons. The short block is factory, aside from obviously the camshaft. It's factory casting heads with our port program. All the body panels, all the windows are all still factory. The subframes are still factory. The front K-member I have modified, kind of Copo-esque to knock 4 or 5 pounds off of it. Really, all the suspension, as far as the shocks, struts, K-members, the body, all of that stuff is still factory in the car. The engine, I even still have the factory cross member for the 6L80. I just modified it to accept the Turbo 400. So a lot of factory parts still on the car, and hopefully in the future I can change some of that. But my goal in 2018 was get more done with less, and that's fairly well what I did. I was able to get a lot of weight out of the car and run some fast times, and still retain a lot of factory parts. It still has roll up, roll down windows. The factory dash and radio and the factory gauge cluster. I still run the factory ECU. The factory engine harness is still in it. So I'm using a lot of GM's technology still.
Kyle asks, if you do cage it, do you think you can find a way to stay weight neutral? And if so, what do you plan to do to make up for that weight?
That's a very good question. I don't know if I can stay neutral with the weight because it's certainly going to tack some on. My best guess of what I could do to neutralize that would be do some different doors probably. I've looked at the Anderson composite doors. I've looked at VFNs. For me, I want to keep the roll-up, roll-down windows. I want to keep the factory style window or doors that I can have door handles on, not have to run a fixed window. I think I can do doors, and I could probably do optic armor front and rear windows on the car and save roughly 65, 70 pounds, and I think that would probably offset a chromoly cage.
David Cohorn asked if you're running these record times on a 275 Pro.
I am running a 275 Pro. I tried a 275/60 Hoosier drag radio earlier in the year and at Camaro Fest actually for some passes. And honestly, I couldn't tell a lot of difference in ET between the two tires. But at the end of the day, I think the 275 Pro is going to be a faster tire than the Hoosier. I think there's a reason that all the 275 guys run that tire. So I'm staying with what works. It's done me well all year long. So that's what I'm going to continue to rock.
Zach Creasy said, beat the Cobras.
Always, Zach. Well, except for that one time that I didn't beat Matt Allman. And he sent me the video last night, I think, to remind me. Like 18 years ago, he outrun me on the freeway from a roll. Probably because he wouldn't dig race, but that's cool.
James Colbert said, do you bring it to Mexico?
Tell you what, James. Last time I had the car in Mexico, Mexico didn't like me. So I don't know. It's exciting. I don't know. I can neither confirm nor deny at this point.
John Ryan said, would you do a 10-point or a 6-point on the cage?
I'll probably do a 10-point at this point, because if I'm going to go through all the trouble to make this car safe and legal, and that's the thing, right now I can take this car nowhere and legally race a class. I can hit testing tunes. I can do little private stuff. I really want to be able to get in this car and go to the track, jump in a class, get in where I fit in, and legally be able to run this car and be safe doing it. So I'll probably go with a 10-point.
Josh Anderson wants to know what usable RPM limitations have you seen with the modified factory parts such as throttle body, intake manifold, and the heads?
Well, if you're talking, it's kind of a complex question. It could be taken a couple ways. For me, my RPM limitation is the factory ECU. 8,200 RPMs is all you can turn with the factory ECU. I'm running the CID 4.0 LS3 intake. I run a 4500 AccuFab throttle body, and I use a LS3 throttle body as a servo with a custom linkage to drive that AccuFab throttle body. My only limitation is the factory ECU. And if you're talking limitation on RPM based on a factory throttle body, a factory LS3 intake, I think the LS3 factory intake, when ported, does well to about 7,000, 7,200, and I think it's fairly well dead after that. We haven't found anything to this point to really help that.
We get a lot of questions about people asking about that CID intake.
Yeah.
If you could go into a little more detail on that.
Well, the CID intake is it's as cast from John over at CID. It's their smallest LS3 intake, 4-inch cross section intake. You can only get those in a 4500 Dominator flange. They're absolutely huge. I mean, the intake probably weighs 30-something pounds. But I feel like when I looked at that manifold, and I ran a Super Victor before I ran the CID. I ran another carb style manifold. I picked up 30 horsepower with the CID over a ported Super Victor. This CID is out of the box as cast. I haven't touched it. I felt like it was already big enough, and it lined up with my ports fairly well on the heads. As a matter of fact, I actually had to touch up the heads to port match them to the manifold. So I haven't tested. I haven't tested the high ram. I haven't tested the mast manifold on my combination, but I can't imagine on my configuration that anything would do any better than the CID in the RPM range that I operate.
What about the limitations of running that CID intake?
It's a series of compromises. So a factory ECU is obviously electronic throttle. To get past that, I built a custom linkage, very elaborate, to drive to use the factory throttle body to drive the 4500 cable-driven throttle body. It's an absolute tuning nightmare. I don't feel like that is the right manifold for you to run. If you have to put an elbow on top, I don't feel like that is doing that manifold justice. I think if you can vertically mount your throttle body with an adapter plate, and then run some kind of air pan where you don't have a restrictive elbow, it's a fantastic manifold. But you better get a hood on the car because it's not child's play. That's a big manifold. It's very large.
Carter Snell wants to know what converter you're using now.
Well, I see the question about me changing. So Chris at Circle D, we run their converter on 99% of everything we do. And Chris did me a fantastic 8-inch bolt together converter, and I ran that majority of the year. He's just kind of tied up on some projects right now, and I went out and I wanted to try something different, and I contacted a gentleman named Greg Slack. I was referred to him by a good friend of mine, Ronnie Hackleton, that runs some. He's got a couple Copo cars that he runs and some class stuff. Anyways, I had Greg build me a custom stator for the converter, and we optimized some pump angles, or changed some pump angles, and gave it a shot, and went out, and the car did go a little bit faster with the converter. So I think that was a step in the right direction for the 8-inch stuff, because this is a fairly unique combination. I think it's just a little bit, just a little bit of trial and error involved in that. And I know Chris over at Circle D. I work with him. I've got several customers that are running 8-inch converters from him, and we're going to continue to work that platform to try to optimize these converters moving forward. Certainly, so that was kind of on my own deal. I wanted something I wanted to give a shot and try on my own. So it worked out for me, and Greg was extremely helpful throughout the converter process and everything. It was really a good experience on both parties. They both helped me tremendously this year.
Damian Mendoza wants to know what's your input on nitrous.
Well, I've kind of fallen out of love with nitrous a little bit, only because with the NA and the boost stuff, nitrous is more of a certainly more of a tuner's power adder. It requires a bit more maintenance, in my opinion, than boost and stuff like that. So for a lot of our customers, nitrous isn't always the best power adder. But that being said, we still run nitrous on a lot of stuff, compound power adder stuff. You know, we've had a ton of success with nitrous and supercharging. So we will continue to use nitrous on builds that where that fits the bill. But I think with today's technology, things have really shifted more towards running, you know, boost. Whether it be, we run a lot of ProCharger stuff, we run some Vortec head units, we do some turbo stuff. That's kind of primarily what we do as far as power adders. But the nitrous is certainly still there, and we do compound that on top of other power adders. So I'm still an NA guy though.
Andrew,
and no, nitrous is not NA.
won't you elaborate on that?
Some guys think that nitrous is NA because it's not forced induction. That's dumb. That's all I'm going to say about that. So it's not naturally aspirated. Nitrous is a power adder, and it is what it is.
Okay. Andrew Cameron wants to know if you'll eventually move away from your factory ECU in favor of an aftermarket one. And if you did, which one would you go with?
Well, that's been a consideration. I've thought about that. I really like the tunability of the Holley ECU. We use Holley on a lot of our builds, street rod stuff, LS swap stuff, power adder stuff. I don't know if I'll make a move on the engine management this year. I think with my current build, 8,200 RPMs is about all you're going to want to spin that LS3 over time. You know, I feel like I'm probably pushing this thing pretty hard. Every time I cross the line at about 7,800 RPMs, I'm wincing. I'm expecting to be blowing the rods out of the side of this block, but it hung in there all year long and took it like a champ. So I don't know that on this build that I'll go with aftermarket ECU, but in the future, if I do, it will be a Holley and probably a Dominator. So.
J.R. Martinez wants to know if you have any plans on bigger cubes.
Man, I think I want to, play this stock bottom end NA deal out until I can't play anymore. When I max this combo out, I thought about building an all-out NA deal. Drag week is, I feel like drag week's calling my name, but it's hard for me to have the time for drag week. But I'd really like to build an NA car, an NA setup, mid 400s cubic inch, and see how far in the 8s I could go. Of course, with that though, Martin is, I've been fortunate to live with the factory differential and stuff in the car, and I imagine, it's going to be more than just changing the engine at that point. So,
Michael Yielding wants to know, how do you pinpoint the weight of so many factory GM parts to know where the weight is worth saving?
Well, if I don't use Google, which I usually don't, I've got a pretty fantastic parts guy. I think his name's Michael Yielding. That I've been able to bother him no less than probably 4 hours looking up part numbers and giving me shipping weights to know before I took something off the car or did something, or if I was considering it. I fairly well knew what it weighed before I got my hands on it. So he's been a huge help too.
Did he complain about it?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Sounds about right. Chris McCabe wants to know if you have any plans for the suspension.
Yeah, I'm probably eventually going to do coilovers on the car. The car works so good. I just don't feel like I've had a reason to really do anything. Moving forward, though, like I said, I want to make the car legal to run in other classes and actually go race the car at more tracks. And being on more varying surfaces, I think that it would be in my best interest to set the car up with a nice suspension to where I could actually have some tunability on the suspension, because the track has to be like flypaper right now for this car to be fast. And I don't want it to be that way in the future. So I will probably do some suspension mods.
Terrence Wilkins wants to know, for 2019, what's your goal ET and mile per hour, and what do you plan to achieve that goal?
Well, I touched on that a little bit. What I plan on doing is probably looking at doing some suspension stuff. I think that I've got some more optimization I can do in the combo. I think I've got a little bit power left on tap, and I probably got a little bit more weight I can get out of the car as well. Goal for 2019, 880 at 150. So anything less, and it'll still be fast, but I won't be happy.
Zach from Texas said, "What's up?"
What's up, Zach? Hey, I saw Billy up there asked about the nitrous on the SS4. It works good, Billy. I actually, on one of my older stop bottom end setups, the original engine that came in the car, I went and with the SS4, I was running with stock heads. I ran 1070s at the time, and on 200 on a single nozzle. I think I went 990s the same night at Memphis with the car, 6L80 transmission and stuff in it. So it works pretty well with that camshaft. Up to about 200, 250 or so.
Chris Collins wants to know, what's the potential of the max package on the stock bottom end?
Yet to be determined. I really considered the max package back in February when I started kind of plotting this build. And the reason I didn't go with our max package is because I already had several thousands of dollars invested in valve train components for LS3 heads and an LS3 intake. Had I been buying that from square one, I would have gone with the max package probably, but being as I was recycling parts from previous builds, I just stayed with the LS3, and that's something I've thought about doing in the future as well. But I think 2019 we're going to have the max package on some proven cars that have done really well with our LS3 products, and I think we'll really get to see what that combo is capable of in the future, short future.
Zach wants to know, what's your opinion on ARP rod bolts? Would you still consider that stock bottom end?
Man, we argued about this all year last year. Some guys think that ARP rod bolts are fine. Some think no. Some think that you could take factory rod bolts and have them cryo-treated. I think the general consensus, most people say stock bottom end is stock bottom end, including fasteners. So, unfortunately, with what we do, we don't really have anybody policing any of this stuff. We're taking the guy's word for it on a gentleman's agreement that his combination is what it is. So at the end of the day, I don't guess there's a whole lot you can do about it, but it is what it is. Stop bottom end is stop bottom end for most people, though. including fasteners.
Just so you know, Mom joined in on the live stream.
Oh, what a surprise.
Let's see. Andrew Cammer, what's your opinion of TSP's stock bottom end in a 5th gen effort? How does it compare in its build to yours, and what are the biggest differences?
Well, it took longer to come up than what I thought it was going to. So, Jason and Trevor and the guys down at Texas Speed did a fantastic job building their car this year. I mean, they came out and absolutely surprised everyone at Camaro Fest with their build. The car, I think the main differences are, in a nutshell, I felt like I had a more refined, rowdy engine combination. And I feel like they just flat out had more car than me. They've got a really, really well-built car. When I looked at it at Camaro Fest, it had the manual brakes and Holley engine management. It had a strut front end and stuff on it. So it was a really well-built car. There's nothing you can't take away from that. I mean, they did an awesome job with the car, and they went fast with hydraulic roller setup. And they were able to do that because they had such a well sorted out car. And I was able to fortunately get the weight down on my car, and had enough muscle to just go faster here at the end of the year. And I truly expect those guys to come back out and outrun me. I mean, I do. I expect them to come back out and go faster. If not by the end of the year, start of next year. It's been it's been awesome for the community, really, for us to battle back and forth throughout the year, and I think there's been a lot of mutual respect there because even though we're competitors, I think there's a respect there, and I can certainly appreciate what they've done with their car as I think they probably can for what we've done with mine. So.
It's definitely been competitive this year.
It has been competitive. I mean, at the start of the year, I just wanted to run 960s. Now I'm running 920s. I think I could probably take the car back out now and go 19s with the car. The fact of the matter is I'm done until I make some changes and get this car safe. I'm playing with fire right now until I get this car safe. So.
Got a shout out here from Deccan at Kentucky Speed.
What's up, man? Good to have you in here.
Chris Tanner wants to know how fast do you think you could get the 5th gen NA stock bottom end? Where do you believe the limit is?
The limit is where we start breaking stuff. I really think with a well sorted out chassis, I do not think that high 8s are out of the question at all. I think you'll see that from myself and from Jason and the guys this year. I think both cars are going to end up in the 8s, and it's just who in the heck's going to go faster? I don't know. Time will tell. We'll see. But I think what we thought were the limits last year, we blew that out of the water this year. And I expect a great 2019. We're going to figure out a lot more about the durability of the LS3, I promise.
Mom said hi.
Hey, Dad. Glad to have you in here.
Brandon said keep up the great work. Chris Collins, I think he's talking about the Max package, said he plans on getting it in February there.
Good deal. Like I said, we've got that on one car that actually frequents the track a pretty good bit. And that package just needs to land on more vehicles that we can mess with at the track and kind of refine this combo. I think we're onto something. I think it's a fantastic combination. Just like, look at how long we've been messing with the LS3 though. Several years, and we're still continuing to get better. And that package will as well. I think at the end of the day, it's got much more capability than the LS3 does. We just got to get in there, spend the time, and get it dialed in.
Heath wants to know if there's any shops that you know of would recommend in the Orlando area.
Man, I don't really know what's down around the Orlando area. I've got a buddy. What's John's shop? Southwest Florida Tuning
Southwest
Solutions.
Florida Tuning Solutions.
John seems to be a stand-up guy, Heath, and I don't think he's necessarily right there around Orlando, but he is down around that way, and you might want to give him a shout and hit him up and see if he can help you out.
David Green said, "Hey guys, big shout out from New Zealand."
Wow. What time is it over there, David? Jeez. Glad to have you in here, though. Brian. No, Brian. Package price on a build like yours? No, we haven't. It's so hard to do because, like with your car, and we run into this a lot. Sometimes a car come in here and has a third of the stuff already done. Sometimes the car has none of the right parts to get to the end goal, and sometimes it's almost there. So if we had to package that together from new with what you've got, 427 Brodix casting, GPI ported heads, F1X cog drive, 4L80. Did we do the Z01 diff? No, Brian's car still has a factory diff in it, I think. For now. I don't know. There'll be some folks with some sticker shock probably. But we can work a package price. It's nothing but money.
Email support@guadneyperformance.com.
That's right.
Aunt Pam joined.
Got the whole family in here.
What Paul Vega wants to know, what are the power gains with the new cathedral port heads we came out with?
Well, we did a set of those on a gentleman's truck, but we did them at the same time we did a camshaft. So Paul, I don't know an exact horsepower number right now on our new cathedral port program. Moving forward, hopefully 2019, we hope to have a ton of engine dyno information. Hopefully we can kind of document this stuff, because sometimes chassis dyno numbers are kind of skewed anyways, depending on the vehicle they're on. If it was same day, we just really flat out don't know yet. But I can tell you the truck that those went on had, which camshaft? It was one of our low lift.
It was our low lift 3.
3?
Yeah.
Mid 220 duration camshaft with those heads, and it was a 5.3, and it made 370 range at the wheels. It was the strongest 5.3 LS based platform in a truck that we've done, and they were our ported 243 castings, weren't they?
Yes.
Okay.
Mark McGuire wants to know, what's more reliable, a 370 or 402 in a daily driven single cab?
I don't think you'll have any kind of reliability issues out of either, honestly. If you're talking about naturally aspirated or even power adder with moderate power, 402 or 370 is, if it's in a 6-liter iron block, that thing's almost indestructible. Within reason. It's either combination will work fine.
Matt Hall said his SS4 no fly cut is getting installed down there in Texas in February, but that brings up a good point. You might want to talk about the no fly cut versus the fly cut model and how that came about.
Well, demand. People. We felt like with our SS4 camshaft, to make it optimal, that the valve vents needed to be what they needed to be, and that tightened up on the intake piston to valve clearance to get it where we really want to run it. I altered the cam specs to basically open that intake valve a little later to give us some more clearance on the intake side. Result, it rivals the power in the mid-upper to upper RPMs. And we've had some actually really good feedback. Just last night I had a friend and a customer over on the East Coast area install that in a 2015, I think. It was a stick car, 5th gen, SS4 no fly cut with Stock manifold. It wasn't ported or anything, and the thing made 494 rear wheel with stock head, so it's pretty strong. But it came about just because we wanted to give the guys a solution um, to slide an aggressive camshaft in there that didn't require fly cutting. And the SS3 is a fantastic camshaft, but we knew we were giving up power, not having that SS4 out there in a no fly cut version. So we remedied that.
John Ryan said he's running the SS3 VVT and Bow White ported heads and wants to know how much he'd pick up switching to our SS4 fly cut and E85.
Well, John, I mean, E85, I think if you were to do nothing, if you just look at the gains from E85 over pump gas on your combo, you may see 10 horsepower. I mean, it's not going to be huge because you just don't have, most cam head combos don't have a ton of compression to really reap the rewards of E85. Unless you're really, really timing limited with your combination E85s, it's not going to be a huge benefit. But it is something. And I think going to the SS4 fly cut model and running E85 would allow you to mill the heads more, get some more compression in it, much more camshaft, because you're talking about a camshaft. Your camshaft is 227 on the intake lobe at 50, and SS4 fly cut's 235. So that's a lot more cam. I would expect that combination with a bump in compression, you could probably see 30 horsepower on that combo with the 85. May surprise me and do more, but I would anticipate that much anyways.
Larry Adams said, turbos for life, GPI's first 4-second street car.
I knew he was going to say that. Larry worked his butt off on that car this year to a lot of seat time for us to get that car where it was at. And there's a lot of awesome people that helped on Larry's car. Brian Zardo, Brandon Stillwell, Dave Ramus. We tuned on the car. It's just been a collaboration effort on Larry's car. Talk about 370 cubic inch and 370 cubic inch iron block build. We went 490s at 145 with, and still really have some ET left in the car. We haven't quite got that 330 foot down yet, but we're kind of out of turbo where we're at right now. So we'll see what 2019 brings.
Mike Carroll wants to know about the power differences between the SS4 and the SS4 no fly cut.
Not much at all in the upper RPMs. I feel like the SS4 fly cut is a little stronger under the curve. I think 5,000 RPM and below, the earlier intake closing event of the SS4 fly cut tends to yield a little bit better power at lower engine speeds than the no fly cut. But they're close enough up top that there's not a huge difference at all one way or another.
Clay Abernathy looks like he's got a D-Series Pro Charger with our SS3.
Mm-hmm.
Won't know how much boost he could run on a Forge 6.0 at 11.3 with E85.
A lot. I mean, E85 on 11 3-to-1 compression on a Forge 6.0, you could max that D-Series blower out, no doubt. I mean, you're probably going to make 16 pounds of boost or so with that thing, depending on the camshaft. But you can max that blower out on that 6-liter with E85. You'll max the blower before you max the engine out.
Jason Jones, what's the best cam for a 6.0 swap in a 2004 Tahoe? Currently running a stock 99 LS1 Camaro cam with 799 heads.
That's going to be dependent on gearing and torque converter. Everyone's goals are different. If you're staying with the factory torque converter, you want to stay small on the cam. Too many times we see this happen. It's way too easy to overcam a truck, 5.3 or 6.0, either engine. Stay small on the camshaft. Personally, if it was me and it was a driver, I would probably stay with one of our little low lift 1 or 2, something in the 2 teens duration wise on the intake side, maybe 220s on the exhaust, and um, rock that combo, and that'll probably be all that you would want to run on a factory converter. If you're geared more towards performance, obviously you can put a converter and a gear in there, and put some more camshaft in it, make more power, but it's gonna come with sacrifices in drivability, and obviously having to run a converter in a 5,000 plus pound vehicle is always gonna degrade the drivability somewhat.
Raymond Cole says he loves his track attack.
That cam's been awesome for us on the LT stuff. That cam has worked really well. It's made good power.
Good question here from Kyle Goddard. Any reliability concerns with the SS4 no fly cut in a daily driver?
Absolutely not. That camshaft we run with the BTR 660 springs like we do on all of our hydraulic stuff. We have guys that run our SS4 variants from the no fly cut to the fly cut model to the SS4 VVT, tens of thousands of miles. The only thing you're going to want to do is just like with any camshaft package that's mildly aggressive. Valve spring maintenance is a real thing. You need to do that. 15 to 20,000 miles, I'd probably pull the springs, check them, replace them as needed. Otherwise, there are no durability concerns whatsoever. Get in the car, drive it cross country. You're fine.
David Green down in New Zealand said it's actually only 10:30 a.m. Wednesday morning. Working on a CTSV, fitting a 10% overdrive blower, big air box, low temp thermostat, all as a starting point. Any other suggestions? It's just a street car.
Just a street car. Just a street car. Very subjective. Sounds like some stuff those crazy guys down under would do. That'll be a fun driver.
Jesus Castillo.
Jesus or Jesus, maybe.
One of them. Should I run a...
Sorry, we butchered your name. We just flat out butchered your name.
Should I run a Gallo 12 or a Gallo 24?
I don't know. I don't even know what a Gallo is. You may have to hit Martin up. That's Martin's thing there. I don't know. If you go by the internet, 24 probably has to be better than 12 because it's bigger. So.
Chris Shawver said, "Can you put an LS in a Mopar?"
Seems like I'm familiar with a purple Cuda that is Pro Charged and LS swapped, and I hear the Dodge guys don't like that at all. It can be done.
Brian said he's dropping his car off this week so he can get that third fuel pump.
You gotta get that fuel pump in there where we can get all the boost.
John Hagan said he ran a 136 60 foot and a 629 in the 8th this weekend in his full weight 13 Camaro SS with bolt-ons.
That's pretty cool. If by bolt-ons, I wonder he means some kind of power adder because
it's bolted on, right?
It is bolted on. Another subjective thing on the internet. Regardless, it doesn't matter the mods. 136 60 foot and 620s in the 8th is getting down in a fit-chin, no doubt about it.
That's a good question here. Josh Anderson. How much compression NA can you safely run with the E85 on stock bottom end?
I tune on some stuff that is naturally aspirated, 400 plus cubic inch. That's 14 to 1. So E85 is a fantastic fuel from my experience, at least up to that point. Would another fuel be better? Maybe. But yeah, it's hard to beat the price and the convenience of E85. And I feel confident you can go in the 13 to 14 to 1 range, on E85 without any trouble whatsoever.
Ivan Reyes says he has a 14 Camaro SS L99. A few weeks ago, he ordered our SS2 VVT and 3600 Circle D stall. Should I add E85 or keep it on pump gas? And can I add a Turbonetics kit with this cam And if so, what kind of boost could I expect?
Good questions. Should you add E85? I mean, E85, like I was telling John Ryan earlier, at lower compression, your gains aren't as significant as they are on a naturally aspirated build with higher compression, but it will help some. If you have the fuel system to support it, go for it. If it's available in your area, go for it. How much? What can you get away with a Turbonetics kit? You got to have a ton of fuel system, ton of injector for E85. Absolutely, that cam will run okay with it, but it will not be ideal for a turbo setup. But we have some very good turbo variants, non-VVT, because with power adders, we just find VVT to be less beneficial, to be completely honest. But how much power can you make on one of those combos is going to be completely dependent on your fuel system and the rest of the build.
Steve Rummel said he's got a Tahoe with 5.3. He's running a 219, 227 cam. I don't know what kind of converter and gears would you recommend?
If it were mine, I would probably run somewhere around. If I was focusing on it being a good balance of a driver with some performance and stuff, I would say 3,000, 3,200 range, and I'd put a 410 in it. I like a lot of gear though. In a truck, I like a lot of gear. If it's got big tires, 33s, 35s, maybe even go 430s.
Andy Gates said, "Dude said Jesus."
You did say Jesus. I mean,
Pray has a question.
Oh,
he wants to know, how'd you get so damn sexy for reals?
Just trying to be like Prey. Everybody wants to be like Brett.
Trey Travis, rebuilding a heads cam intake catfish, needing a cam selection to swap. Car will be on a 150 to 200 shot on a built LS1. Looking at some stage 3 cams, what's the benefit of a nitrous cam?
Good question, Trey. On the LS1 deal, at only 150 to 200 horsepower with a nitrous, there's probably not going to be a lot of benefit between a NA cam and a nitrous cam. And if you're looking at something else, you also have to look at a stage 3 cam. My stage 3 cam may be different from the next guy's stage 3 cam, completely different in valve events and size. So, is it if it's a manual car, if it's an auto car, will directly dictate what you need to do with that camshaft. But at 200 horsepower with a nitrous, I wouldn't want to give up the NA power to have a perfect nitrous cam. I would want something that was great on motor, and even an NA cam will still work great with 200 horsepower with a nitrous. If I was shooting 300-400 horsepower, I would lean towards nitrous grind.
Chris Neal wants to know what cam you would suggest for a twin 67, 66 billet turbos with 9.5 to 1 compression on a 6.0 with LS3 unmilled heads.
So much to take into consideration there. Shoot us an email, Mr. Neal. We'd be glad to work with you on that deal. You're not going to need to let us know, more about the vehicle it's going in, transmission type. What are your goals and your targets for this combination, and we can certainly pinpoint you in the right direction.
Caleb Cam Only Turner wants to know what's the best bang for the buck on a blower setup for LS3 headed iron 370 in an F body. So well, I'd love to do an LSA swap, but I enjoy my wiper blades.
Most people do. I don't really care too much about them, but that's why they're not on my car. But Caleb has a little Trans Am car, so it's 410. Really limited on supercharger. I mean, Pro Charger is probably going to be your best benefit, option there. 370 cubic inch. Depends on what transmission's behind it, how well it's built, and all that stuff. there's some considerations there, but I would look in the direction of Pro Charger for that setup. What Aquaman say up there?
He said, "Are you dropping to a 3.7 in 2019 Ride Dog?"
370 gear from a 391. Right now at 144, 145 miles an hour, I'm crossing the traps at about 7,700 and some change. I've got about 500 RPMs of 500 RPMs of engine speed left, so I think I'm just going to try to send it with 391s this year. If I get on the rev limiter before the strike, I may consider a gear swap, but I really hate to. I thought about that. I hate to take the gear out of it because I hate to hurt the first gear. I considered going to a 370 and then changing the low gear ratio in the transmission, but I hate to make too many changes at one time. So I'll probably stay with the 391 at first, and then if I've got so much trap speed that I'm running out of gear, that's a very good problem to have. I'll cross that bridge when I get to it.
Chris McCabe wants you to tell a little bit about the new track tuning program that we offer.
Well, that's something we're gonna really try to focus on this year. There's make no mistake that the track is the best place to dial a car in. It's hard to do that out on the street. You got limited traction, you got traffic. Obviously you don't need to be breaking the law. There's only so much stuff you can do on the dyno. The track is where it's at. That's where you need to spend your time dialing the car in for a guy that wants, total performance. And we're going to try to get a limited group, 5 guys, 5 to 7 guys maybe. We have to limit how many cars we have at the track because there's only so much time to get this stuff done. And these cars take time. We're going to try to really focus on that this year. I would like to make that a monthly thing. If we have enough demand for it to make it twice a month, then that's fine. But the guys at Memphis, when we did our rental back in late November, Mr. Terry took care of us over there. He drove and sprayed that track probably 5 times while we were there. We had about 8 or 9 cars there, and it would absolutely rip your shoes off on a 50-degree day. It worked really well for us. So you'll find out what your drive line's made of when we go over there. That's for sure.
Matt Pollock said, "Can you get a cam suggestion for Forge 383 LS1, Trick Flow 235s, and a 300 shot plate kit? It's on a 6-speed."
Yeah, Matt. Shoot us an email, or you can hop on the website, guatneyperformance.com. We have a custom cam form. Populate all those fields. We're pretty specific in what we like to know about that stuff, and we can certainly do something. But it looks like your cam doesn't have very much exhaust split, so at that amount of nitrous, 300 plus, you certainly probably benefit from having something a little bit more nitrous friendly ground for that thing. It may sacrifice you some power on motor, but we could certainly look at that for you.
Samuel Santiago said, "What's the better bang for your buck? The GPI 376 for boost or LSX 376 B15 crate?"
Probably depends on what kind of power you're wanting to make, because that B15 crate engine is a fantastic little engine. Probably for up to whatever power, they rate that thing. It's probably underrated like most things from GM. If you were just going absolutely max effort, a custom built engine would probably fit the bill better than the B15. But if you're looking at something fairly mild, 15, 20 pounds of boost, the B15 is probably a fantastic engine for that.
Jeffrey Weeks said, "How deep do you think a little LS3 top end 6.0 G8 can be taken into the 10s?"
As deep as he wants to try to go for it. Hey man, nothing but air and opportunity. Like I said, when we started doing this stuff, I look back at when I wanted to try to just run 10s with my car. There was not even an automatic 5th gen with cam and heads running 10s, and I thought the world was going to end when I ran 1080s, and now I'm running 920s. So certainly don't be afraid to push, Jeff. who knows? I mean, weight's gonna be the key on a G8. You know, power to weight is where it's at. You know, you just gotta. It's gonna take the whole combo to be right. But your little car runs great. I mean, just I think you just keep plugging away, and you're gonna go fast. You're gonna get in the tens with the car.
Zach said, "Tell us how you ran that record-breaking run with the baby car seat in the back."
Well, you know, I always like to be prepared, and just in case there's some, random kid at the end of the track, I always like to be able to bring them back up to the pits to meet back up with their family and everything. So it doesn't weigh that much.
Tony Moffrey, does GPI offer mojo in a can?
We don't, but we could probably look at doing that. We could probably take Gojo, hand cleaner, and probably make some custom labels and mix up some kind of concoction, and we could probably come up with some tone. Yeah, probably so. I don't know what it would sell for, or what it would be good for.
Ryan Mooneyham is in like Flynn on the first GPI track tuning.
Good. We've got a handful of you Pro Charge 427 guys in the works on these 5th gens to get dialed into track. It's going to be a fast year in 2019.
Charlie wants to know what type of fuel system you suggest for a 400 plus shot of nitrous.
Just a dedicated standalone. We'll do that with a good pump. Assuming that you're running a nitrous fuel like C23 or something like that. That's what we run on most of our standalone stuff. 400 horsepower worth of nitrous can be fed with just a good single dedicated nitrous system.
Andrew Cameron said, "What do you think about sacrificing?" Sacrificing sidewall to get a smaller diameter tire and effectively more gear ratio.
Well, that's the fight that you manual transmission guys have to fight. I mean, it's you really need all the gearing you can get. You need more gearing than we can give you in the factory differential. So absolutely, if you can make it work with the smaller sidewall, the car is going to be faster. The problem is just simply getting a small sidewall tire to work with a manual trans car. It's just hard to make that combo work. Billy Sharp was, he did the most out of that car with a factory clutch that I never would have thought that clutch would have lived with, but it did. And, he was able to make that thing work pretty good with the little 25.5-inch tall Hoosier drag radial tire on a stick car. If you can make it work, it'll be faster, but making it work is going to be hard.
Shane and Danita said that you're famous.
Probably for the wrong reasons.
Mitchell Durr said he'd be interested in the track tuning event next year.
Hey,
looks like he's got a 416 Max package Camaro.
Right. That's gonna be great for us. We really want to get out and help refine some of these combos, and get these cars 100%. I mean, that's what everybody really wants with their build. And while we've done a little track tuning and track rentals in the past, but it's something we feel like really moving forward. As we're expanding, I think we're going to be able to offer that service more frequently than we have in the past.
Great question here from Andy Gates. Do you know if Kevin Martin is ever going to finish his car?
That is a great question. I mean, we may have to use a cherry picker to get it lifted up out of the concrete out back. I mean, this thing has like grown roots out here, but actually, Kevin's short block is together for his car, and we hope to be busting some bugs with it early 2019 before the weather gets warm. Kevin's car should be pretty fast. I completely think that we're going to go 850s or better with that car in decent weather starting out. we'll see.
Marty Harrison said, "What time of the year are y'all going to start track tuning?"
I'm going to try to start mid-January. If the track's going to let us come out there, if they feel like that the surface temperature is warm enough for us to get the track in good shape to make some passes, we're going to do it. I mean, the thing is, cool weather is where the cars are going to be the fastest. If we can make them work, if we can get the track in shape, then we're going to do it as soon as possible. January is what we're looking at right now.
Chase Brown wants to know, what's your opinion on qualifying a car as a street car? I know that's a pretty hot topic.
It is a hot topic. It's very subjective. Okay, so back in the day, a street car could be purchased without AC, with a power glide transmission, with a big block, with a solid cam. At the end of the day, a street car is whatever you are comfortable driving on the street. If you're man enough to strap in that thing and get it out on the street, I guess you got a street car. If it's tagged and insured, what else do you really need? I mean, really, and I used to do this too. It's easy to cry about a car that is more aggressive than yours just because it's more car than yours is. It doesn't mean that they don't have a street car. It just sometimes somebody's got more car than you've got. And it took me a little while to understand that. At the end of the day, it is what it is. And if a guy will tag and insure it, send it.
What's that, Dan?
Do 3 more questions.
3 more questions? 3 more questions and we gotta go.
All right.
Marty Harrison again is asking about some of the best mods to go with on the CTSVs, trying to push 700 horsepower.
We've done several V combinations, and your basic pulley combos, cam heads, ported blower, fuel system, E85 if it's available to you. If not, pump gas and meth works good. E85 with meth injection works good. Those cars with pulleys, cam heads, your bolt-on stuff, porting the blower, the snout, basic stuff like that, we'll put that thing north of 700 horsepower to wheels. No doubt. We've done several of them. We've got one in the shop we're working on right now, as a matter of fact.
Looks like that's about all the questions here. Unless I missed somebody. Show them our new boxes.
Let's see. Yeah, Dan is on it. A 255, 955, E85 setup. I'm with you. I mean, people over pulley those little LSA blowers, I think, sometimes. So, a smart combo on the LSA combo will get you north of 700.
John Ryan said, what do you think about the high ram with the SS4? And would it need a 5C or a 6C?
Probably all the converter you can stand to throw at it. We've got a customer that's got the SS4 with the high ram, and it really pushed the power curve up. The thing is an absolute monster, 6,500 RPMs and up, but it really suffered with the high ram below 6,000 RPMs, even with the BVT stuff. So careful consideration in the cam high ram configuration with converter. It's hard to get the converter right for a big RPM setup on a 6L80 transmission. Much easier on a 3-speed.
It's almost over now, but Dad just joined in on it. Last question here.
All right.
Mark Andrew Bates got 2008 G8 GT60. Is 2-inch headers too much for NA?
No, they're not. 1 7/8 to 2 inch at 4 or 5, 600 horsepower power range, you're probably not going to notice much difference between the two. I mean, certainly single-digit difference. I don't think 2 inches is too much header at all for most configurations. It looks like we pretty much got everything answered. Thank you guys for tuning in. Drop us some feedback on what you guys want to hear us talk about next time. And we certainly appreciate everybody jumping in here and the questions. And I hope we were able to answer the questions and shed some light on some topics. Appreciate you guys.